An ordinary schoolboy puts on a virtual reality headset and suddenly finds himself not in front of a boring blackboard, but atop an ancient pyramid in the jungles of distant Mesoamerica. He isn't listening to a long lecture. Instead, he's walking across stone slabs, examining hieroglyphs, and hearing sounds as if priests are passing by right next to him. In just a few minutes, the lesson turns into an expedition, where every movement of the hand becomes part of the learning process. The classroom disappears, the familiar walls dissolve. Now learning is no longer confined to four walls. Just imagine, at one school in California, teenagers take an astronomy course by putting on virtual reality glasses. They don't just look at pictures of planets, they fly up to Jupiter, navigate through asteroid belts, move across the surface of the moon, zoom in on objects, and even watch the changing of the seasons in real time. Even ordinary math is changing too. Now a child builds their own bridge across a virtual river, tests its strength with interactive problems, and immediately sees the results of their decisions. Instead of tedious equations on the board, there are dynamic models that you can rotate, zoom in on, and take apart. This approach is already being used by several schools in Singapore, where knowledge is not an abstraction, but a tool you can literally hold in your hands. Virtual reality makes it possible to bring together students from different corners of the world in a single space. In a history lesson, children from New York, Rome, and Tokyo meet on the streets of medieval London. They take part in street scenes, acting out events and trying on the roles of people from that era: craftsmen, guards, merchants. In this way, a dull textbook paragraph comes to life, and students learn to collaborate without language or cultural barriers. In London, virtual classroom technology has already been tested in English literature lessons. The students discussed Shakespeare while sitting together at a virtual table in a replica of the historic Globe Theatre. They could hear the crowd buzzing around them, and the actors reciting lines right before their eyes. In Norway, during geography lessons, teenagers embark on a digital journey through snowy fjords, study the Arctic ice, and observe bird migrations using three-dimensional models. At the same time, learning becomes completely interactive. The system responds to every gesture, provides hints, offers tasks, and checks solutions in real time. The exam doesn't take place at a desk, but on a virtual volcano where students must respond correctly to an eruption scenario, calculate the consequences, and save virtual residents. Teachers are also changing their usual methods. Whereas knowledge assessment used to mean a standard test, now the teacher gives students the task of finding an ancient artifact using clues encoded throughout the virtual world. Each student follows their own path, encounters different tasks, and only by answering correctly do they gain access to the next stage. For example, a world history lesson was held in one of the schools in Texas. Instead of taking notes, it's a real hunt for knowledge. Technology provides access to museum collections without having to cross oceans. A child from a rural school in Oregon can examine the frescoes of the Louvre or restore an Egyptian statue right at home. Collections are updated instantly, and rare exhibits are available for study to anyone interested. This not only saves resources, but also erases the boundaries between provinces and big cities. All this is possible thanks to virtual learning platforms that allow assignments and worlds to be adapted for each student. Machine learning analyzes achievements and suggests individualized learning paths. Some set off to study marine biology at the bottom of the ocean, others fly to explore Mars or master ancient Greek theater. Such experiences are already being used in Finland. There, every lesson becomes an episode of a grand adventure, where the main goal is not just to memorize, but to experience knowledge firsthand. And when classrooms disappear, it creates space for the most unexpected experiments. For example, at one school in Arizona, they held a virtual day without borders. The children spent an entire school day traveling through different eras, countries, and sciences. This format quickly went viral, and dozens of other schools rushed to implement something similar. And this is only the beginning. After all, if the walls of the classroom no longer exist, it becomes possible to learn literally anywhere and any time. And that means the changes are only gaining momentum. But what will happen if such technology is applied where the cost of a mistake is especially high? This is where virtual reality truly makes a breakthrough. In a hospital in Houston, in the morning, a doctor puts on not a lab coat, but a virtual reality headset, and immediately finds themselves in an operating room where everything happens on the edge between reality and simulation. He needs to perform an emergency heart surgery, but the patient is not a living person, but a digital copy of a real person created from scans and test results, down to the smallest anatomical details. Every heartbeat, every tissue movement is fully recreated, and the doctor hones their skills, seeing the results right before their eyes. But here, it's not just about learning theory. The instruments respond just as they would in a real operating room, and even the pressure of a human hand is felt through the sensors. It can make mistakes, redo things, trigger a crisis scenario, and no real person is ever in danger. This format has already been tested in clinics in the UK, where trainees have gone through complex surgeries that previously they could only witness in practice after several years on the job. At the Boston Medical School, students gather for a virtual masterclass where each assignment is a new mission to save a life. The system simulates rare conditions that occur only once a decade, immersing an entire team of medical professionals in them. Someone has to quickly diagnose a rare disease, someone else needs to find the source of internal bleeding, and another person must urgently perform defibrillation. Mistakes are tracked instantly, and immediately after the attempt, the virtual platform offers an analysis. Where hands slowed down, at what moment the reaction was delayed, and how the situation can be corrected. This approach allows every action to be practiced until it becomes automatic, and you can train all night long if you won't just put on the headset. A fire in a multi-story building is recreated on a virtual platform to train paramedics. The task is to work in conditions of complete chaos. Fire, smoke, victim screams, limited time, and unusual situations. Everything is as close to reality as possible. The temperature, obstacles in the way, even your breathing quickens as the simulation intensifies the stress. The team quickly assigns roles. One searches for victims, another applies a tourniquet, and a third leads people to a safe zone. After each attempt, the virtual instructor analyzes mistakes on the fly and offers the next, even more challenging scenario that could happen during a real shift. This kind of training is now standard practice for several emergency medical services in Chicago. Even experienced surgeons use virtual simulators to master new technologies, such as performing operations with the help of robots. In a small town in Iowa, a medical student tries for the first time to stop massive bleeding in a virtual patient. His mentor, an experienced surgeon, joins the training from another country, observes in real time, and offers advice, commenting on each action with voice and visual cues. The result is equal opportunities to acquire medical skills regardless of where you live. At some universities in France, students participate in joint virtual shifts where groups from different countries come together. Some are responsible for diagnostics, others for transportation, and some for team management. This kind of experience prepares students for international work and pushes them to improve not only their knowledge but also their teamwork skills. The platform instantly translates internal comments between languages, and the simulations are tailored to the typical cases found in each country. Now, even the most complex medical cases become part of the training practice. Virtual models of Alzheimer's disease, heart attacks, or rare infections are available to every student, and the complexity of the scenarios increases as their skills develop. This is no longer just textbook theory, but an opportunity to make real discoveries, learn from mistakes, and prepare for moments when mistakes are unacceptable. And it is here that virtual reality paves the way for an entirely new kind of education, where not only students become doctors, but also representatives of other future professions, and every lesson becomes a step toward careers that never existed before. Imagine this. An ordinary student puts on a headset and his room disappears. He finds himself behind the wheel of a complex truck somewhere on the streets of Los Angeles. The route is set by a virtual instructor, and the truck model responds to the slightest turn of the wheel, every adjustment of the mirrors, every signal from the road. Make a simple mistake in judging the distance, and the simulator immediately shows the consequences. Not just penalty points, but real scratches, dents, and a delayed delivery. Already, several driving schools in Texas have completely switched their practical lessons to virtual simulators. Here, students learn to avoid dangerous situations, practice maneuvering in heavy traffic, train for night driving, and rehearse evacuating victims using special equipment. At the same time, the instructor can slow down time, replay an unsuccessful maneuver, and offer the student a chance to try again. In aviation schools in London and Miami, pilots are no longer limited to just flight hours on small training aircraft. They have simulators waiting for them, where the cockpit of a Boeing or Airbus is fully replicated, and behind every window a real storm approaches. The wind blows, pressure changes, birds appear, and even technical malfunctions occur. Here, trainees learn to make decisions under pressure, practice emergency landings, and communicate with air traffic controllers in real time. At one of the Canadian schools, a training session was recently held for future commercial aviation pilots. On the screens, they simulated a scenario involving a sudden loss of cabin pressure. The cadets quickly put on their oxygen masks, calculated the nearest airport for landing, and sent out emergency signals. Everything was as realistic as possible, and afterwards, each step was discussed with experienced captains who joined in from different countries. In New York laboratories, chemistry students create dangerous substances not in real flasks but in virtual labs. Simulators allow them to mix reagents, observe reactions, and try out dozens of scenarios all without the risk of explosions or gas leaks. If something goes wrong, the system instantly stops the experiment and shows how the mistake can be corrected. This approach is already being used in several colleges where digital assistants are responsible for teaching chemistry, and every experiment is recorded for later analysis. Engineers and architects in Tokyo design buildings in three-dimensional spaces. They don't just draw blueprints, they literally build the structures with their own hands. The virtual environment allows them to test the strength of beams, the stability of walls, and earthquake safety all in real time. There are already projects where future specialists create entire neighborhoods and then run earthquake or flood scenarios to see how their buildings will withstand the forces of nature. Now, mistakes can be fixed in just a few seconds and the results checked instantly, since the virtual model fully replicates the laws of physics. In Detroit's motor schools, virtual simulators of machine equipment replace expensive parts and consumables. A future mechanic disassembles an engine, finds the malfunction, and replaces the parts. All of this takes place in a digital workshop that looks and sounds just like the real thing. Here, instructors can change scenarios. They can send a student to repair an electric car with a battery malfunction, or restore a classic Mustang after a virtual crash. A mistake isn't the reason for a penalty, but a real opportunity to understand what happened and practice the solution until it becomes second nature. This practice is already in use at several colleges, and the training simulators are constantly updated with new car models. Future rescuers in California undergo training to respond to natural disasters in fully three-dimensional landscapes. At their disposal are virtual cities, forests, and subway tunnels where fires, landslides, earthquakes, and floods are constantly occurring. The students learn to search for people on the rubble, provide emergency assistance, plot routes, and work as a team. After the training, the platform analyzes each person's performance, showing where the team lost time and where they managed to save more victims. Several fire academies in the state use similar simulators. The virtual environment is also changing the approach to training programmers. In Los Angeles, students develop games not just on a computer screen, but by literally walking through their own code. Objects come to life, algorithms move, and errors are highlighted right in the air. You can pick up a tank and take it apart, see what went wrong, and assemble the correct chain of functions. This hands-on experience allows you to master complex concepts more quickly, and you can work on projects collectively, all while being in the same virtual office. Journalists in Berlin learn how to conduct interviews and work in extreme conditions. The simulator models mass protests, press conferences, and military conflicts. The student must quickly assess the situation, ask questions under pressure, and work with various sources of information. Any mistake immediately affects the course of events. You might lose exclusive material or even face virtual arrest for violating ethical standards. This is already part of the training program at several international media schools. Now, even those who live thousands of miles from major cities have access to virtual practice. In rural schools in Arizona, students try their hand at being agronomists. They grow digital crops, fight pests, and experiment with fertilizers. The outcome depends not on theory but on making practical decisions. This approach shows which professions will be in demand tomorrow and allows you to try on the role of a specialist of the future before it's time to choose a real career. Each simulation becomes not only a tool for honing skills, but also a ticket to a new reality where you can make mistakes without fear and learn faster than ever before. Everything that once seemed like unattainable practical experience is now within arm's reach. And as technology is already transforming entire professions, the next step seems almost unbelievable. Where once the teacher's voice filled the classroom, now the material is delivered by a virtual mentor powered by artificial intelligence. Not just a lecturer program, but a full-fledged conversational partner who remembers each student's way of thinking. To some, it explains formulas using baseball statistics as examples. To others, through models of planetary motion. Schools in South Korea have already implemented such assistants, which adjust assignments based on difficulty level and take into account the student's learning pace. If a child makes a mistake, the virtual teacher immediately generates hints, offers additional explanations, and sometimes completely changes its approach to find a way to make the topic understandable. Communication takes place by voice. The student asks questions, debates, proposes their own hypotheses, and the system responds not with templates, but in detail, sometimes even with a touch of humor. Throughout the lesson, artificial intelligence tailors the learning process to each member of the group. For those who are ahead of the class, it offers challenging puzzles or invites them to work on a mini project. For those who struggled with something, it gently returns to the mistake, breaks it down into parts, and helps them go through the entire process again. At one Swedish school, a student who had long struggled to understand algebraic expressions was given an assignment to compose a piece of music instead of more math problems. And through rhythm and simple animation, the student arrived at the correct solution on their own. Machine learning allows the AI teacher to track not only students' achievements, but also their level of interest, fatigue, and even emotions. In a classroom in San Francisco, the platform analyzes a child's facial expression through a headset camera, and if it detects boredom or confusion, it suggests switching to a game, mini competition, or a short quest. During the process, the student chooses when to take a break and how quickly to move forward. This flexible approach has helped hundreds of children improve their academic performance and feel more confident in class. The integration of artificial intelligence is not limited to a single subject. In English classes, the virtual mentor simulates dialogues on various topics, plays the roles of conversation partners, and instantly corrects pronunciation. In biology class, it displays three-dimensional models of cells and organs, offers to break them down layer by layer, and immediately asks questions to reinforce the material. At one school in Germany, an algorithmic teacher generated a unique genetics lab assignment. Each student was given a digital DNA sample to investigate, identify mutations, and submit a report. And the platform instantly assessed the work and provided feedback. In China, they are experimenting with smart feedback. The technology tracks how much time a student spends on different parts of the lesson, records where difficulties most often arise, and adjusts recommendations for future lessons accordingly. In one case, a student got stuck on the topic of atomic structure. The system created a virtual lab tool for him, where he could assemble molecules by hand, observe how they interact, and immediately conduct mini experiments. Human teachers no longer need to spend their valuable time grading homework assignments. Artificial intelligence checks the answers, identifies common mistakes across the entire class, and after the lesson creates personalized sets of exercises for each student. At one American school, it was discovered that 3 students were having trouble understanding fractions, and within a week the platform trained them using special visualization-based problems. Even outside of class, the virtual mentor remains available. A student can reach out to it early in the morning, at night, or on weekends to review material or ask for an explanation of a new topic. In several schools in Britain, students use the platform for independent research. They conduct virtual experiments, keep scientific journals, and formulate hypotheses, while artificial intelligence helps them structure their thoughts, recommends literature, and checks the logic of their reasoning. Parents also get access to analytics. They can see how much time their child spent on a lesson, which topics were easy for them, and where questions arose. This not only allows parents to track progress, but also to understand how to help their child build a learning path. But perhaps the most exciting thing is the ability to personalize not just the topics, but also the style of presentation. Some people are more comfortable learning biology through comics, others through games, and some through step-by-step research or complex projects. Artificial intelligence quickly recognizes these preferences and offers an appropriate educational path. Schools in Finland are already using this model. One child learns history by acting out scenes with virtual characters, while another solves geometry problems by designing their own virtual city. In such a school, there are no boring lessons or standard assignments. Every day becomes a new adventure, where the digital mentor not only oversees the process, but also acts as a guide through the world of knowledge. With the emergence of such teachers, everyone gains access to quality education no matter where they are. And it is here that virtual reality erases the last barriers between the student and their future. When knowledge becomes personal experience and learning turns into an exciting game, it's impossible to go back to the old boring classroom. And the most amazing thing is that now this entire world of knowledge is literally at your fingertips. At one school in Los Angeles, students are taking part in a World History Quest. Each student holds a controller in their hands. And it's not just a joystick, it's a key to traveling through the ages. Instead of just listening to a story about the construction of the Colosseum, the student lays the first stones themselves. Then, together with virtual workers, raises the arches, sees how the structure grows with each movement, and upon completion, instantly finds themselves in the stands during ancient Roman games. Students argue with each other, sharing their discoveries. And the correct answer isn't an abstract formula, but a successfully completed project. At the same time, the system records every action. Who interacted with the objects the most, who came up with the most unconventional idea, who was the first to solve a difficult problem. After the virtual lesson, each student doesn't receive grades, but their own digital portfolio of discoveries with a collection of unique artifacts and achievements. In San Diego, a virtual reality platform helps students learn foreign languages through adventures. Students don't just memorize verbs, they set off with a virtual guide to Paris, ordering croissants, buying a museum ticket, meeting locals, and responding to every phrase with their voice. Any pronunciation mistake is immediately corrected with a prompt, and for successful communication, the student advances further along the route. In Houston, math class takes the form of a race through a virtual city. Children build bridges, calculate road slopes, experiment with different materials, and see how the structure immediately collapses if they make a mistake. Each participant can pause, analyze what went wrong, and then instantly start a new attempt. In one of the teams, a child discovered an unconventional solution to the problem. The system immediately generated a new level of difficulty for him, and now everyone is watching to see if he can complete it faster than the others. In Chicago, biology labs are no longer done with posters but on a giant table of virtual objects. Students touch three-dimensional models of cells, take apart the nucleus, membranes, and organelle soul with their own hands. One group performs an operation to remove a virus, another models the process of cell division, and the third tries to create its own organism from given genes. Every stage of a reaction or mutation is displayed instantly, and the platform records the entire process. After the lesson, the teacher reviews the recording, noting where the team did best and where the material needs to be revisited. Elite colleges in New York now hold virtual debates. Students connect in a shared world where each is assigned a role: politician, journalist, or advisor. Topics are selected by artificial intelligence, and the system analyzes arguments, simulates the audience's emotional reactions, and adjusts the pace of the discussion based on the results. During the process, participants hone their speaking skills, learn to respond quickly to objections, and even use real-time translation to communicate with peers from other countries. In Texas, a platform for creative projects has been introduced. An art lesson begins with a student standing in front of a virtual canvas the size of a wall. In their hands are a brush, a palette, and a whole arsenal of tools for mixing colors. Any brushstroke instantly turns into a three-dimensional form. You can move along the canvas, add light and shadows, experiment with different styles, and even view the painting in a virtual exhibition mode. After the lesson, students share their works in the gallery. Their works can be viewed by classmates, parents, and even artists from other countries who have joined the platform. The most incredible thing is the ability to literally gather knowledge out of thin air. In some Canadian schools, geography lessons take place aboard a virtual airship. The student pilots the ship, chooses the route, lands in different parts of the world, and studies the terrain, climate, and natural resources. Along the way, unexpected situations occur: storms, avalanches, changes in the landscape. At each stage, the platform asks questions, guides data collection, and rewards resourcefulness. The results are integrated into a route map, which becomes the student's personal achievement. All of this is no longer science fiction, but everyday reality for thousands of students around the world. In the virtual classroom, everyone studies the material in their own way. Some go through a level several times, some compete for the best result, and some invite classmates to solve problems together. Every achievement is immediately recorded in the digital profile, and access to knowledge is unlimited. You can return to a completed topic at any time, try a different approach, get additional assignments, or review the explanation again. This is how an ordinary lesson turns into a real adventure, where knowledge is not only transmitted, but experienced in every movement of the hand, in every solution, and in every attempt to tackle a difficult problem. The boundaries between reality and learning are blurred, because now any school child, student, or adult can find themselves at the very center of the action. And although the journey toward the perfect virtual environment is only just beginning, it is already clear today that the future of education is not about formal classrooms or boring textbooks, but about a world where learning is an engaging experience that you can touch, feel, and repeat as many times as you need,